Xi Jinping has cemented his position as China's leader for life. You must have heard about it. The Communist Party has wrapped up its 4-day-long conclave today. It passed a resolution, one that put Xi Jinping in the same league as Communist Party legends. Names like Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping. Xi Jinping now has the same status as these two leaders. Today's resolution cements Xi Jinping's place in Chinese history, but it makes no mention of the problems that China is dealing with. Problems like the Evergrande debt crisis. Chinese markets were in panic mode yesterday as the Communist Party leadership was meeting. It was make or break for Evergrande. The cash-strapped developer was staring at deadlines. Payments worth $148 million were due. Remember, Evergrande had missed the first deadline. The company had a 30-day grace period. Then we got a flash. It said Evergrande officially defaulted. The announcement came from a German firm called DMSA. DMSA is a foreign investor of Evergrande. It had put money in Evergrande bonds and it hadn't received any payments. So DMSA announced that it is suing Evergrande. The press release said this, and I'm quoting, DMSA is preparing bankruptcy proceedings against Evergrande. It calls on all bond investors to join it. Then we got another flash. Turns out Evergrande did make the payments after all, but at the very last minute. So technically, it has averted a default. For now. But for how long can it keep going like this? Remember, this company owes $300 billion. $300 billion in debt. So a payment of $148 million doesn't even begin to solve the crisis. Evergrande investors live through the same nightmare every time a payment is due. The company had 3 payments to make in the past month, and on all 3 occasions, it paid at the very last minute. They're pushing their luck, and experts see through that. S&P Global Ratings has made an assessment. This is what it says. The fundamental situation for Evergrande has not really changed. We remain sure that default is almost a certainty. Evergrande is a ticking time bomb, and it's about to blow up in the face of foreign investors. Why do I say that? Why foreign investors? Because Beijing has reportedly come up with a plan for Evergrande. It won't bail out the company. It will go for what is being called a controlled implosion of Evergrande. What does that mean? What is a controlled implosion? It basically means that the company will be allowed to fail in parts. It will be allowed to fail gradually. Some assets will be sold off, some will be allowed to fail. Home buyers and businesses, the ones involved in Evergrande projects, will be protected. The damage to them is going to be limited. But what about foreign investors? There is no cushion for them. They're on their own. Going by this report, looking out for foreign investors is not a priority for Beijing. China doesn't care for them, so they could lose money. China's priority is the Communist Party and its interests. And Evergrande is critical to that. The financial health of Evergrande is directly linked to China's domestic stability. Listen to this. Evergrande owes money to 171 domestic banks in China. In other words, if this company fails, it hits 171 domestic banks in China. Also 1.5 million Chinese people. That's how many people have bought homes with Evergrande. Their deposits are at stake. Their life savings are at stake. And these homes are yet to be built. If Evergrande fails to deliver, can you imagine the kind of social unrest that is going to follow? Let me show you a trailer. When news about Evergrande broke, there were massive protests in China. We showed you these images then. Angry homeowners and investors reached Evergrande headquarters. They barged in and they demanded their money back. A woman even tried to commit suicide there. That's how desperate these people are. This crisis could explode. The Communist Party is paranoid. It is obsessed with internal security and stability. It wants to avoid major protests at any cost. So it will protect the investors at home and not bother about the investors overseas. Remember, Evergrande is the most indebted developer in the world. $300 billion is no joke. And if this is Beijing's plan for Evergrande, what will it do when other real estate companies fail? It's a question of when, not if. And where does this leave foreign investors in China? Consider this estimate. In the next 2 months, China's property companies have to pay back $40 billion to foreign investors, 40 billion. From the looks of it, they're heading for a default. Chinese developers are not making money now. Fewer people are buying apartments, property valuations are falling. So just like Evergrande, other Chinese developers will struggle and default. And Beijing would let that happen. By now, foreign investors should know better. They have already suffered major losses in China thanks to the policies of President Xi. His wide-ranging crackdowns have led to losses worth billions. Let me show you this report from July. American investors have lost $400 billion. Why? Because the Chinese president ordered a crackdown on Chinese companies. The result was this: stocks of Chinese companies listed on US exchanges were hammered. You might remember the crackdown on the education sector in China when China banned private tutoring apps from profiting. That one order alone led to losses worth $12 billion. Whose money was this? American and European investment banks. They're the ones who lost money. Some investors have realized that China is now a risky investment destination. So they're putting their money into Indian companies. There is a clear shift in trend here. In June this year, Chinese startups received more than $17 billion as investment. In July, the funding dramatically dropped. Chinese startups got just $4.8 billion. In the same time period, investments into Indian startups shot up. In June, they received $1.6 billion. In July, nearly $8 billion. For the first time since 2013, the value of venture deal investments in India was more than China. What does this tell you? Global investors are losing faith in Xi-nomics. And for good reason. Why should they trust a government where policies can change on the whim of a man? By letting foreign investments fail, China is driving away investors. It is no longer the golden goose. Putting money into China is officially a risky proposition now. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.